The forest had always been a place of whispers and shadows. Villagers spoke of it in hushed tones, warning of the cursed woods that bordered the kingdom. Trees twisted like broken bones, their branches clawing at the sky. And an eerie fog clung to the ground like a living thing. Few dared enter, and those who did rarely returned with more than frightened tales. But Leora was not like other villagers. She had a heart that burned brighter than any fear. A courage that rose with every whisper of injustice or danger. When she heard the news that the Alpha King's wolf pups were trapped in a fire set by a rival sorcerer, her mind could not rest. She did not pause to weigh danger or death. The thought of innocent lives, the young and helpless, called to her like a song she could not ignore. The villagers tried to stop her. "You cannot go," an old woman pleaded, her voice trembling. "The forest will take you. The fire, it is cursed. Even the bravest warriors do not return." "I must," Leora replied, her voice steady, though her heart thrummed against her ribs. "I cannot leave them to die." No one spoke further. They knew the fire's truth, but courage was Leora's alone. With a simple pack of essentials, she stepped toward the forest, the smoke curling above the treetops like dark fingers reaching for the sky. The moment she crossed the forest line, the world changed. The light dimmed. Shadows shifted unnaturally. Every crackle of burning wood seemed to speak her name, mocking her audacity. Yet, Leora pressed forward. Her eyes, sharp and alert, scanned the smoke and flame, looking for the pups, for any sign of life. The fire was worse than she had imagined. It roared through the forest, consuming everything in its path. Sparks flew like swarms of angry fireflies, and the heat pressed against her like a living wall. Yet in the midst of danger, her mind focused solely on the small whimpers that echoed faintly through the roar. She followed the cries, winding through charred trees and fallen branches, slipping over scorched roots. Her lungs burned, her skin prickled, and her hair was singed. But she did not stop. At last, through a thick veil of smoke, she saw them. 3 tiny wolves, their fur blackened, eyes wide with fear. They trembled on a small patch of scorched earth, too young to defend themselves, too weak to escape. Leora's heart clenched. Kneeling beside them, she whispered soft words, trying to calm their panic. Her hands shook as she lifted the smallest pup, its tiny body lighter than she expected. "I've got you," she murmured. "You're safe now." But safety was not yet hers. Flames surged closer, and the wind shifted, carrying smoke thick as a storm cloud. Leora knew she could not outrun the fire alone. She needed help, and that help came in the form of a shadow moving through the smoke. Massive and silent, the Alpha King appeared, his presence more terrifying than the fire itself. Towering, with fur like midnight stitched with gold, eyes burning with intelligence and command, he stepped through the haze as though born from it. His gaze locked on Leora, and in that moment, she felt both exposed and understood. "You do not belong here," he said, his voice deep, resonant, carrying both warning and curiosity. "I came for them," she said, holding the pup closer. "They are innocent. They do not deserve to die." His eyes narrowed, flicking to the other pups. "And yet you have risked your own life," he observed, each word deliberate, heavy with authority. "Few humans have courage. Fewer still would enter my forest unbidden. I could not leave them," she admitted, her voice soft but unwavering. "I had to try." He studied her, his gaze piercing, measuring, as if weighing her soul. Then, without warning, he moved faster than her eyes could follow and lifted the remaining 2 pups from the blaze. The fire's heat seemed to bend around him, parting like water, yet his eyes never left hers. "You are reckless," he said, placing the pups safely on a small, untouched patch of ground. "And yet, there is a strength in you. I have not seen it in centuries." Leora looked at him, heart still pounding, breaths ragged. "I only want them safe," she whispered. "I am not seeking strength or praise." He studied her a moment longer, then nodded slightly. "Perhaps not," he admitted, his voice softer now. But strength chooses its own champions. And you have chosen to walk into fire. The fire crackled, and the forest seemed to respond, the flames licking higher, as though enraged by their intrusion. The Alpha King moved toward her, sweeping her and the pups with a protective presence. With a powerful leap, he carried them both out of the immediate danger, landing them beyond the flames in a small clearing untouched by fire. Leora fell to her knees, panting. The pups huddled close to her. Her hair was singed, clothes scorched, but she was alive, and for the first time, she dared to look at him fully. "You saved them," he said, his voice quieter now, almost intimate. "But know this. Such courage carries a price." I do not understand," she said, her hands stroking the pup's fur, feeling their warmth and life. "You have entered a world you do not yet know," he said, his golden eyes glinting. "I am the Alpha King of this forest. These pups are under my protection. And now, you are part of it. Whether you wish it or not." Leora swallowed, confusion and fear mingling with a strange thrill. "I do not belong here," she said. "I am a human. I only wanted to save them." He stepped closer, a silent intensity radiating from him. "Belonging is not always a choice," he said. "But you have shown yourself capable of more than most. That is a dangerous thing." For a long moment, they simply regarded each other. The forest around them was still alive with smoke and embers. But in the clearing, a strange calm had settled. Leora's hands shook slightly as she brushed the fur of the pups, feeling the steady rhythm of their tiny hearts. "You could leave," the Alpha King said finally, his voice low, almost reluctant. "But I doubt you will. Few humans walk into fire and walk away unchanged." Leora looked up at him, meeting his gaze. She did not know why, but she did not step back. Something in his presence called to her not fear, not desire, but a recognition of shared courage and a bond neither could yet name. Before she could speak, the forest shivered. Sparks rose higher, and the wind carried the distant sound of a haunting howl. Something dark lingered, watching. The rival sorcerer's magic was not done. The Alpha King's ears twitched. "You have survived this trial," he said, his gaze sweeping the horizon. "But the danger is far from over. You will learn soon enough that courage alone cannot protect you or them." Leora tightened her grip on the pups. Fear pressed against her chest, but so did determination. She had entered the fire for a reason, and she would not turn back now. "I will do whatever it takes to keep them safe," she said, her voice firm, though her body trembled. The Alpha King regarded her silently for a moment, then stepped back, his shadow stretching across the clearing. "Very well," he said finally. "But remember this, human. I do not forget those who enter my world. And you have marked yourself. I will watch you. And perhaps claim you." Leora's breath caught at his words, though she did not fully understand them. She only knew that she could not leave the pups behind. Not now. Not ever. And somewhere deep in the shadows, the forest seemed to whisper, carrying the promise of trials, of magic, and of a connection that neither fire nor fear could undo. The night fell, thick and heavy, but Leora stayed, holding the pups close, feeling the weight of the Alpha King's gaze upon her. She had walked into the fire. She had saved the innocent. And now, she would have to face the consequences of courage in a world ruled by shadows, power, and a king who would not let her go. And in the distance, the wind carried a warning, a howl that was both threat and promise, echoing the Alpha King's unspoken vow. She was no longer free, and the forest had claimed her heart. The castle rose from the forest like a dark jewel, its obsidian walls reflecting the pale light of the moon. Jagged towers reached toward the sky, and silver banners fluttered in the wind, the sigil of the Alpha King etched in every thread. Leora's heart thumped in her chest as she approached, the pups tucked safely in her arms. She had never seen anything like it, so grand, so intimidating, and yet strangely alive. as if the castle itself were watching her. The Alpha King walked beside her, silent and commanding, his golden eyes scanning the path ahead. Leora felt a mixture of awe and unease. This was no ordinary ruler. His presence filled the air like a storm gathering strength. She tried to steady her breathing, but every step forward reminded her of how small she was in this world of power and shadows. "You are stronger than most humans," he said finally, breaking the silence. "Few would have walked into fire for creatures not their own. Fewer still would have survived." "I only did what felt right," Leora replied, her voice quiet but firm. "I could not leave them to die." He glanced at her, and for a moment, the fierceness in his eyes softened. Right. Or foolishness. Sometimes the difference is only in perspective. They entered the castle through massive double doors that swung open to reveal a hall of towering ceilings and flickering torchlight. Shadows danced across walls adorned with tapestries depicting battles and hunts long past. The air was thick with the scent of burning wood and iron, a reminder of the power that ruled here. Leora's eyes widened, but she did not falter. The pups, sensing the Alpha King's authority, moved closer to her, trembling but safe. The Alpha King's expression softened as he watched them, a protective edge in his gaze. "They belong to me," he said quietly, almost to himself. "And now, you have stepped into their world." Leora understood the weight of his words. She had entered his forest, defied the fire, and saved his young. Now, she had no choice but to face the consequences. He led her to a chamber high in one of the towers, a room lined with books, maps, and ancient artifacts. The windows were tall, letting in the moonlight that bathed the space in silver. A fire burned in the hearth, crackling softly, casting a warm glow across the room. "Rest here," he instructed, his tone firm yet not unkind. "You will need your strength. There is much to learn about this place. And about me." Leora set the pups down gently, watching as they explored the room, sniffing at the floor and corners. The Alpha King remained by the door, his stance unyielding. There was a tension in the air, a silent struggle between freedom and the force of his presence. "I am not your prisoner," Leora said, meeting his gaze. "I came here to save them. I did not come to belong to anyone." "You are not a prisoner," he replied slowly. "But neither are you free. Freedom has rules in my world. And one of those rules is that those who enter it cannot leave unchanged." She swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his words. There was something magnetic about him, something that drew her closer, even as it warned her to stay away. The Alpha King's strength was not just physical. It radiated from every movement, every glance, every word, and yet, beneath it, she sensed a loneliness, a vulnerability hidden behind the armor of power. As the night deepened, he spoke of the forest, the kingdom, and the legacy he bore. He told her of rival sorcerers, of curses laid upon the land, and of the burden of protecting his lineage. Leora listened, fascinated, yet wary. She was a human, and he was a king of beasts and magic. How could their worlds truly meet? "You have courage," he said finally, his voice softer now, almost hesitant. "But courage alone is not enough. You must learn to balance it with wisdom and with patience." "I can learn," Leora replied, her voice steady. For the first time, the Alpha King's eyes softened completely, and he allowed a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Perhaps you are more than I thought," he murmured. "Perhaps you are exactly what this world needs. Or perhaps, what I need." The words sent a shiver down her spine. She did not know how to respond, so she stayed silent, letting the firelight dance across her face. Over the next days, Leora explored the castle under his watchful gaze. She learned the ways of the forest and the magic that flowed through it. She discovered hidden passageways and secret chambers, each telling a story of battles fought and victories won. She marveled at the strength and wisdom of the Alpha King, yet she also noticed the loneliness that lingered in his golden eyes. The pups became a bridge between them. They clung to Leora, but the Alpha King allowed her to care for them, watching from the shadows as she nurtured what was precious to him. A strange bond grew in silence, built on trust, courage, and the quiet understanding of shared responsibility. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of blood and gold, they walked through the castle gardens. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of night-blooming flowers and the distant smoke of the forest fire that had finally died out. "You are far braver than I expected," he said, his voice low, almost a rumble beneath the wind. "And yet, your bravery makes you vulnerable." "Vulnerable?" Leora asked, looking at him. "I have faced fire. I have faced shadows. I am not afraid." "Fear is not always what protects you," he replied, his gaze intense. "Sometimes, it is wisdom. And sometimes, it is knowing your place in the world." "I do not know my place," she admitted softly. "I only know that I cannot turn away from what is right." He studied her. And in that moment, Leora felt as if he could see every part of her. Her courage, her doubts, her fears, and her determination. She did not flinch, though her heart beat wildly. "You are unusual," he said finally, a hint of admiration in his tone. "Most humans would have fled. Most humans would have begged for mercy. But you act. And that makes you dangerous and fascinating." Leora's cheeks warmed. She did not know if she should feel fear or pride. There was a tension between them, unspoken, filled with the weight of power and the pull of something deeper, something neither dared name. Before she could respond, a sudden chill swept through the garden. The Alpha King's ears twitched, and his eyes narrowed. Leora felt the hairs on her arms stand on end. "They are coming," he said, his voice low. "The sorcerer's magic has not been silenced. It watches, and it waits." Her heart skipped a beat. The danger they had escaped was not over. She glanced at him, seeing the protective edge in his eyes. "Then we face it," she said, her voice steady despite the fear rising in her chest. He nodded, his expression unreadable. "Yes. Together. For now." And as the night deepened, Leora realized something she had not admitted even to herself. She was no longer just a visitor in this world. The Alpha King's realm, his power, and his life were entwined with hers. She did not yet understand how, or why, but she knew this much freedom was no longer hers alone to claim. The pups curled around her feet, and the Alpha King stood silently beside her, his golden eyes scanning the darkness beyond the gardens. The wind carried a whisper, a promise of trials yet to come. And in that moment, Leora understood that her journey had only begun. She had entered the fire for them. She had survived. But the castle, the forest, and the Alpha King himself held challenges she had not imagined. And somewhere deep inside, she knew that whatever came next, her life and her heart would never be the same. The night held its breath, and Leora felt the weight of a destiny she had not chosen but could not escape. The Alpha King's gaze lingered on her, a silent claim unspoken yet undeniable. And in the shadow of the castle, a new tension began to build, one of power, desire, and a connection neither of them could yet name. The forest beyond remained alive with secrets. And as the moonlight touched the towers, a single truth became clear. Leora's courage had opened a door, and once opened, some doors could never be closed again. The forest beyond the castle was quieter than usual, yet it carried a weight of magic that pressed on Leora's chest. Even after surviving the fire and the first encounter with the Alpha King, she felt a shiver run through her spine as she followed him deeper into the woods. The pups trotted beside her, alert and wary, their tiny bodies moving with surprising confidence. "This place," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the crunch of leaves beneath their feet. "It feels alive, and yet, so heavy." The Alpha King's eyes glimmered in the dim light, alert to every sound, every movement. "The forest remembers," he said softly. "It remembers blood and fire, courage and fear, and it will test anyone who walks here." Leora nodded, her grip on the pups tightening. She felt a mix of fear and determination. She had already faced fire for these little lives, and she would face anything else, the forest or the sorcerer's magic scent. They moved through narrow paths where the trees leaned close together, their branches like fingers forming tunnels above them. Shadows stretched unnaturally, and Leora felt as if unseen eyes were watching, judging, waiting. The Alpha King walked ahead, confident and powerful, yet she noticed the tension in his shoulders. Even he could not control every force in this place. After a long stretch, they came to a clearing where the ground had been scorched long ago. Ash and blackened soil stretched in all directions, and the air smelled of smoke and old magic. The Alpha King stopped and turned to her, his golden eyes serious. "This is where the sorcerer's curse lingers," he said. "It is not strong enough to harm the pups now, but it waits, and it can grow stronger if we do not act carefully." Leora looked around, her heart tightening. "How do we stop it?" He crouched to the ground, his hands tracing patterns in the ash. "By facing it," he said. "By showing it that courage and life are stronger than fear and destruction. You will help, Leora. Your heart, your choices will matter here." She nodded, swallowing hard. She did not fully understand what he meant, but she trusted him. She had followed him into fire before. She could follow him into shadow as well. The moment she stepped forward, the forest seemed to shift. The shadows thickened, forming shapes that flickered like living creatures. Whispered voices brushed against her ears, speaking in a language she did not understand, yet their tone carried warnings, promises of fear and loss. "Do not fear them," the Alpha King said, his voice steady, though his golden eyes glinted with concern. "They are illusions. They are meant to test your heart, not your strength." Leora took a deep breath and stepped forward, the pups close to her side. She focused on the warmth of life, on the small beating hearts she had sworn to protect. Slowly, the shadows twisted and recoiled, unable to touch her resolve. "You are strong," the Alpha King said, his voice carrying pride. "Not just in courage, but in heart. That is what magic fears most." As they pressed further, the illusions grew more vivid. She saw herself falling, the pups being taken from her, the forest burning again around her. She felt panic rise, her chest tightening, but she forced herself to breathe, to hold on to the present, to hold on to the truth. "Focus on what is real," the Alpha King whispered. "Focus on life, on what you love. Let that guide you." Her eyes fell on the pups, their small bodies trembling but alive, and she felt a surge of determination. "I will not let you go," she whispered, stroking their fur. "I will protect you." The shadows hissed and recoiled, and then began to shrink, fading into the mist. The forest seemed to sigh, as if acknowledging her courage. Leora looked up, and the Alpha King's expression softened. "You have passed the first trial," he said. "But there is one more, one that will test both of us." Before she could ask what he meant, the ground beneath them trembled. From the mist, a figure emerged, tall, dark, and imposing. The sorcerer's magic had taken shape, a shadow of the man who had caused the fire. His eyes glowed with a cold light, and his presence chilled the air. "You dare return?" the shadow hissed, voice echoing through the trees. "You think a human and a wolf king can undo what I have done?" Leora stepped forward, her chest tight but her voice firm. "We are not afraid of you. Your magic cannot take life from those who fight for it." The Alpha King growled low in his throat, his body coiling with tension. "Leave them," he commanded. "Leave this place, or face the consequences." The shadow laughed, a sound that made the hairs on Leora's arms rise. "Consequences? You speak as if you could defeat me. You are merely flesh and fur. I am power itself." Leora felt a fear she had not known before, yet she also felt the strength of her choices. She had walked into fire before. She could face shadows now. She stepped closer to the Alpha King, letting her courage mingle with his strength. Together, they advanced. The Alpha King's presence seemed to push the shadow back, while Leora's words and resolve created a shield of warmth and life. The shadow shrieked, thrashing against forces it could not touch, unable to break the bond of courage and loyalty between human and king. "You are strong together," the shadow hissed, shrinking further. "But this is not over. Darkness always returns." The forest seemed to shift again, this time in relief. The mist lifted slightly, revealing a small glade where the pups could play safely. Leora knelt down, letting them crawl into her arms, their tiny bodies trembling with exhaustion but alive. The Alpha King stepped beside her, his golden eyes watching her with a mixture of respect and something deeper, something unspoken. "You have done well," he said quietly. Not many humans could face such trials and remain true to their heart. Leora smiled faintly, brushing soot from the pup's fur. "I only did what I had to do. They are innocent. That is all that matters." He looked at her, his expression unreadable. And then he nodded. "And yet, it is your heart that saved them, not mine. That is why you matter." For a long moment, they stood in silence, listening to the forest's quiet sigh. The fire had been conquered. The curse weakened. Yet a tension lingered. The Alpha King's presence was both protective and commanding, a force she could not ignore, yet one she had come to trust. As they turned to leave the forest, the shadow's voice whispered once more, carried on the wind. "You cannot hide from what is coming. The forest remembers. The king remembers. And so, must you." Leora felt a chill, but she held her head high. She had faced fire, shadow, and curse. She had saved life when it seemed impossible. And she had done it not alone, but alongside the Alpha King, a being of power and mystery who had begun to trust her courage. The Alpha King's gaze lingered on her as they walked back to the castle. His expression was unreadable, yet she sensed a change, a recognition of her strength, and perhaps a warning. "You have done well," he said finally, "but courage carries consequences. There will be tests yet to come, and your place is no longer outside my world. You have stepped into it fully." Leora nodded, feeling the weight of his words. She did not yet understand all that it meant, but she sensed the truth. She was no longer a visitor. She was part of this world now, bound by courage, trust, and a strange bond that neither fire nor shadow could undo. The forest behind them seemed to breathe in relief, yet the wind carried a promise of trials yet unseen. Leora tightened her grip on the pups, feeling their warmth and life against her chest. She knew that the path ahead would not be easy. Darkness always returned, as the shadow had said. But she also knew something stronger. Courage, loyalty, and a heart willing to protect could stand against even the fiercest power. As they reached the castle gates, the Alpha King stopped. His golden eyes searched hers. And for the first time, Leora saw a flicker of something she could not name, respect, perhaps, or something deeper, something that hinted at the bond forming between them. "You are far from ordinary," he said finally, "and you have changed things, more than you realize. Remember this. The forest tests all, but it favors those who face its trials without fear. You have faced them. But your journey is not yet over." Leora's chest tightened, her mind swirling with questions and emotions she could not yet name. I understand," she said softly. "I will face whatever comes." The Alpha King's ears twitched as the night deepened. He gave a slow, deliberate nod. "Very well. But know this. Those who enter my world are never the same again. And neither are those who touch my heart." The pups nuzzled her hands, and she smiled faintly, feeling a warmth that contrasted with the shadows around them. She had walked into fire, faced illusions, and defied dark magic. And now, she stood at the threshold of a world that demanded courage, wisdom, and trust. A world where the Alpha King himself watched, waited, and perhaps began to care. The forest behind the castle whispered in the wind, carrying the shadow's final warning. The trials were not over, but for the first time, Leora felt ready to face whatever came. Alongside the king who had claimed her courage, and perhaps, unknowingly, her heart, the castle sat like a shadow against the fading light of dawn. The wind carried the scent of the forest, the smell of ash from the fire that had threatened the Alpha King's pups, and the lingering tension of trials yet faced. Leora stood at the highest balcony, holding the pups close. Their small bodies warmed her hands, reminding her of why she had ventured into fire, why she had risked everything. The Alpha King approached silently, his golden eyes glinting in the first light of day. He moved with the grace of a predator and the authority of a king. Leora did not flinch, though she felt the weight of his presence press against her very soul. "You have done more than I expected," he said, his voice low, almost gentle, yet carrying a power that demanded attention. "You have faced fire, shadows, and dark magic, and you remained steadfast." "I only did what I had to," Leora replied softly, her gaze fixed on the forest beyond. "I cannot turn away from life, from what is innocent or in need." He stepped closer, the light of dawn, casting long shadows across his face. "And yet, you have changed more than the world around you. You have changed me." Her heart skipped a beat. She had sensed it before the bond. The respect, the tension, but hearing it spoken aloud brought a new depth of emotion. She did not respond immediately, unsure how to navigate the complex currents between them. Power, protection, and something that felt like longing. The castle gates opened as a rider approached from the neighboring kingdoms, messengers of challenge and diplomacy, their banners fluttering in the wind. They sought to test the Alpha King's strength, questioning the story of the human woman who had entered the fire. Leora's chest tightened. She had thought her trials were over. But the world outside the castle now demanded courage of a different kind. "You will face them," the Alpha King said, his voice firm, "and you will stand by my side." "I will," she said, determination ringing in her words. She would not flee. She had entered fire once. And she would stand in shadow, in light, in challenge, for the sake of those she cared for and the bond that had grown between her and this extraordinary king. The humans and their allies arrived at the castle courtyard, where banners snapped in the wind and soldiers lined the stones, swords glinting. They demanded proof of her deeds, of her courage, and of the Alpha King's power. Leora stepped forward, the pups trailing behind her, and faced them with unwavering eyes. "You doubt what courage can achieve?" she asked, her voice carrying across the courtyard. "These creatures, these pups, faced death and lived. And I walked into fire to save them. You may doubt, but courage and heart cannot be denied." The Alpha King watched from beside her, his golden eyes gleaming with pride. He had seen her courage tested, her heart proven. And now the world would see as well. The neighboring leaders could see not just bravery, but loyalty, wisdom, and the undeniable bond between human and king. A tense silence fell over the courtyard, broken only by the wind and the soft whines of the pups. One by one, the challengers lowered their banners, recognizing that they could not break the trust and courage that had already proven its strength. The Alpha King stepped forward, his presence commanding. "You see now," he said, his voice carrying authority and power. "That strength comes in many forms. And those who protect life, who walk into fire and shadow alike, deserve respect, not doubt." Leora felt a warmth in her chest as the king's words settled around her. She had not only saved the pups, but she had also helped him secure his kingdom, and in doing so, she had secured a place by his side, a place not of fear, but of mutual respect and growing trust. That night, the castle seemed to breathe in quiet relief. The threats had been met, the pups were safe, and the Alpha King's power was recognized by friend and foe alike. Yet a different tension filled the halls, one of unspoken words and emotions that had grown through trials and danger. In the chamber where Leora had first been brought, the Alpha King stood silently, watching her. "You have proven more than courage," he said, his voice low, almost intimate. "You have proven loyalty, heart, and strength. Qualities I have long sought, and rarely found. I did what I had to," Leora replied, though her voice softened. "Not for praise, not for reward, but because it was right." He stepped closer, his golden eyes holding hers. "And yet, you have changed my world. I have lived centuries, guarding my power, my lineage, my life. But never have I encountered one who walks willingly into danger, who protects without question, who challenges me without fear." Leora's breath caught. She had felt the pull, the tension, the unspoken bond. But now it was laid bare. The Alpha King was not merely protective or commanding. He was moved, transformed by her courage and heart. You are different," he said, the words almost a whisper. "And perhaps you are necessary, not only for the kingdom, not only for the pups, but for me." She looked down at the pups, then back to him. I cannot say what the future holds," she admitted. "But I know this. I will protect what I love, and I will stand by those who trust me." A silence fell between them, heavy with meaning. The forest outside whispered against the castle walls, carrying with it the memory of fire, shadow, and trials past. And within the chamber, two hearts acknowledged the bond that had grown through courage and trust, a bond neither fire nor shadow could undo. Days passed, and life in the castle settled into a rhythm. The Alpha King allowed her freedom to care for the pups, to explore the castle, and to learn the ways of his world. Yet every glance, every movement, carried the weight of unspoken connection. Leora felt it, and she saw it in his golden eyes, the quiet pull of mutual respect, admiration, and something more profound, something neither could yet name aloud. One evening, they stood together atop the highest tower, watching the sun set in brilliant hues of red and gold. The pups played at their feet, their tiny forms casting long shadows. Leora felt a calm she had not known before, a sense of purpose and belonging she had earned through courage and heart. "You are no longer a visitor," the Alpha King said softly, his voice carrying over the wind. "You have entered my world fully, and you are part of it, part of me." Leora looked at him, the truth of his words settling in her heart. She had walked into fire for others, faced shadows, and survived curses. She had risked everything for courage and loyalty. And in doing so, she had found a place where she truly belonged. She began, her voice faltering for the first time. "I do not know what the future holds, but I know I belong here, with them, with you, in this world." He stepped closer, the wind carrying the warmth of his presence. "Then we will face it together," he said. "The trials, the threats, the shadows, together. And perhaps, in time, you will understand how much you have changed me as well." The forest below seemed to sigh in quiet approval. The fire had been conquered, the curses weakened, the kingdom secured, and yet the story was not complete. Leora felt a thrill of anticipation, a readiness for whatever came next, knowing she was no longer alone, and that her courage and heart had forged a bond stronger than fear or shadow. The Alpha King's golden eyes held hers, steady, unwavering. "I will never let you go," he said, the words carrying a weight that was both protective and intimate. Leora smiled faintly, her heart steady. "And I will never turn away from those I love," she replied. "Not from the pups, not from this world, not from you." The wind carried their words across the castle, through the forest, and into the night. The pups nuzzled her hands, the castle walls held the memory of fire and shadow, and the Alpha King stood silently, a presence both fierce and tender. For the first time, Leora understood the true meaning of courage and loyalty. It was not merely surviving fire or confronting danger. It was standing firm, in heart, in spirit, and in love. And in that moment, atop the tower, with the sun setting in brilliance and the wind whispering promises, she felt a sense of peace she had never known. The world outside would always carry challenges. Darkness could rise again. Shadows could linger. Yet she also knew this. Courage, loyalty, and love had forged something unbreakable between her and the Alpha King. And as the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, painting the sky in fire and gold, Leora whispered softly to herself, to the pups, and to the king beside her. "We have survived fire, and together, we will face whatever comes next." The forest, the castle, and the wind seemed to agree, carrying their courage, their bond, and their love into the night. A promise of hope, of protection, and of a future shaped by bravery and heart.